Good evening, everybody. My name is Raju Balakrishnan. It is my privilege to serve as the Dean of the College of Business at the University of Michigan-Dearborn, and it is also my pleasure to welcome you all to our really exciting panel discussion today on keeping talent in Michigan. This panel is the centerpiece of several events that we are holding today looking at talent. They bring diverse views to discuss how organizations are creating cultures to attract and retain dynamic talent. And really, talent is, when you talk about talent, I would think that the College of Business at the University of Michigan-Dearborn is a natural place to hold this discussion for two reasons. One, well, many reasons, but I'll mention just two. One, we create talent on a continual basis, all right? And a prime example of this is on the panel right here, Aisha Salim, who is one of our alums, okay? But equally importantly, we do a fantastic job of keeping that talent in Michigan. As you may all be aware, over 90% of our students come from this region of Michigan. About 80% of them choose to remain in Michigan. And again, I'm going to single out Aisha here. She interviewed with, I understand, Microsoft, Google. I mean, you name it, the companies, they wanted her. But she chose to take a job with the city of Detroit and chose to be here. I mean, that is not uncommon. We have a lot of students who really are invested in this community, in this region, and want to contribute. So this discussion we are going to have today is going to be spot on because we are focused on how we create talent in Michigan and how we go about retaining them in Michigan also. So, and I'm really glad that there are so many students, employers, and alums here to listen to this discussion because part of our motivation here is to create those networking opportunities for our students. So without further ado, I'll turn the floor over to, and I should mention that we are thrilled to be partnering with WWJ AM 950 in this endeavor. And I'm going to turn the floor over to my good friend, Murray Feldman at this point.
Thank you so much, Dean. And it's a pleasure to be back here at University of Michigan-Dearborn. We've partnered on a lot of events with this school, and it's just great to be here. I'm honored to be here. WWJ is honored to be here again, especially for this topic because it's so important. As the Dean said, attracting and retaining talent in Michigan. Every month, 3 to 4 million people pick up and leave their jobs. They decide to go someplace else. And studies tell us that right now, 1 out of every 3 employees across the country is contemplating a move. They're looking to move someplace, to go someplace where it will be better for them. So the question is, the ones in Michigan, how do we keep them here? And the ones that are not in Michigan, how do we get them here? These people are working on that every single day, and they've had success in doing it. Kimari Yole is Vice President of Talent Development for Quicken Loans, the nation's largest mortgage lender. She's responsible for developing and implementing the corporate talent development and organizational effectiveness strategy at the company. She has over 20 years' experience in client services, sales, and corporate education with the goal of creating organizational successes. Kimari was recognized last year as one of Michigan Chronicle's 40 Under 40 for her business achievements and her community service. Wendy Pittman is Vice President for the Strategic Partnerships at Talent EI, a Detroit-based company that has brought to market and patented an online talent exchange. They deliver talent at a fraction of the cost of traditional recruiting methods. Wendy has more than 20 years' experience in business operations, nonprofit management, and education. She's devoted her career to transforming innovative ideas into practice. She's held leadership positions at the Henry Ford Academy, Soros Foundation, and the Humanitarian Aid Foundation. Rachel Bartels is Executive Director of Hello West Michigan. She helps educate employers and prospective job candidates about the region. She also helps many of those job candidates prepare for their first big career move. Rachel was named a Corp Magazine Most Valuable Millennial in 2015. The Grand Rapids Business Journal named her to the list of 40 under 40, and Rachel was a finalist for the Epic Emerging Leader of the Year recognition last year. Aisha Salim is a Detroit native who graduated from University of Michigan-Dearborn in April of this year, so we say congratulations on that, and also congratulations for landing your first big job. She is the first conversational UX designer, and she works at Quicken Loans. When she's off the job, she enjoys consulting at local startups and playing tennis. By the way, everybody in here knows what a conversationalist UX designer is, correct? Does everybody know? Does anybody know? I had to look it up. One person knows. I should have called you. They combine voice, chat, or any other natural-based technology to mimic a human conversation. As we say on the air, more about that to come from Aisha, so stay tuned. I want to tell us a little bit about your companies. Kamari, everybody knows what Quicken Loans does, but not everybody knows how big the employment footprint is here in the metropolitan Detroit area, especially in the city of Detroit.
So it's interesting that you say that, Marie, because we look at ourselves at Quicken Loans as a technology company that does mortgages. Most people would look at us and say, you just sell mortgages. But we're so much more than that. We have over 90 companies within our family of companies. We're the largest employer within the city of Detroit. You can come into our organization and be a mortgage originator, or you could be a beekeeper. You could be a UX designer. You could be a client ambassador. You can be a property manager. And so I think that's important to understand when you think about the impact that we have in the city of Detroit, because there's a host of opportunities. And I like to say we are one family with many opportunities. Our team members navigate through our organization seamlessly. The way that we're set up, we're shared services, meaning that within our HR function, we support not just Quicken Loans, but we support Rock Ventures. We support StockX. If you're interested in being a shoe authenticator, you can ask me what that is later, Mary.
Gotta write it down.
Right, and so when we think about the talent that we're trying to attract and retain, we have to think about who's coming into the job market today, right? And I don't want to just say millennials or Gen Zers, but those are the folks that are coming in. And so how are you creating diversity of experience for those individuals so that they are growing and developing within your organization? Oftentimes, team members will leave organizations because they're not being developed. They feel that they have plateaued. They're not being challenged. And so for us, when we think about the city of Detroit and the impact that we have, it's creating those experiences. And then we couple that with the experience of providing impact or the abilities to impact the communities in which we live. So that's extremely important. So this year alone, I believe we're almost at about 200,000 volunteer hours that our team members have done, because we are committed to the community. And so when you think about combining purpose and passion, those are two key things that helps to retain team members. And that's a huge impact that we have on the city of Detroit.
Wow, great. Wendy, Talent EI, a small company, but boy, do you serve a lot of clients and help a lot of people find themselves in their careers.
We do, yes. Thank you, Murray. So Talent EI, we are a Detroit-based company. We're located downtown in the beautiful Guardian building. We are a small business. We use Talent EI, the tool that we have developed to hire our talent, and it's really transformed how we hire our talent and done an amazing job of really changing the talent that we have so that they better align with what we were looking for. And so the platform is an online talent exchange, but it moves beyond the resume and beyond job descriptions, and it solely focuses on the skills and interests of the candidate or the job seeker and that job that he or she is looking for, and the specific needs and requirements of the employer. Because we know that oftentimes job descriptions are out of date, and oftentimes it's really just a catalog of what a marketing director or a UX designer or an engineer might do, and candidates often change their resumes to match the needs of the job description, and by the time it gets to the hiring manager, we have a misalignment. And so if we can move beyond that and really start by focusing on the skills and interest, we have seen a better alignment, And to layer that in, two additional things about our platform that I think are real differentiators. One is that it's a blind correlated matching system. So before you see any biasable information like name, where you live, where you went to school, where you worked, first we look at where the skill alignment is, what kind of skills and interest and preferences are. That's number one. Number two, it's also blind on the employer side. So while Quicken Loans is awesome and so critical to our community, there are many small to mid-sized businesses who don't have that brand recognition, and so they're missing out on getting candidates. And so if we can align those candidates in a cohesive system where we can share those candidates so that candidates that don't work at Quicken Loans might get connected to a job like at Talent EI, we can do a better job of really raising the level for the entire ecosystem in our community.
Thank you very much. Rachel, you provide at Western Michigan, Hello West Michigan, really a matchmaking service, and you go out and work it personally.
So I would really like to look at it as more of a building of bridges between candidates and companies. That's how we look at it, because we're not quite as sophisticated as Wendy in terms of our matchmaking. So Hello West Michigan came about back in 2007 when people weren't really moving to West Michigan. Even if they were offered jobs there, they weren't saying yes. And so our employers were looking at why are our candidates saying no to these fantastic opportunities. And it was because they didn't understand what it's like to live in West Michigan. And the employers said, you know what, we really need to address this and help people understand that you can have a fantastic life here when you think about what you want to do after 5 o'clock and on the weekends. And so they created Hello West Michigan. And we're actually a nonprofit that works to educate people about the lifestyle in West Michigan. We work to actively attract job seekers to our region so that we're not just waiting for people to come find us, but we actually go out and look for them. And then lastly, that connection piece, really building a bridge between job seekers who say, yes, I'm interested in West Michigan and I want to come here, and the employers that are out there looking for them. So we really focus on those three areas, the education, the attraction, and the connections, to help really build bridges between candidates who are looking and companies who are looking for talent.
Aisha, here you go. Tell us what you do.
So I'm a conversational UX designer. Essentially what that means is I design meaningful and engaging conversations for chatbots and voice assistants. So how many people in this room have a Amazon Alexa or a Google Home? So all of those conversations that you've had with an Alexa has probably been something a conversational designer has designed at some point.
There you go. And we'll find out why she chose to come back here in a little while. I do want to mention that everybody has a couple of cards, pieces of paper and pencil there, or pens. If you have any questions for the panel, just write them down, hold your hand up, and we'll bring them up here and we'll get to them. Very briefly, I want to start by asking everybody to address this. What do you see as the biggest challenges to attract and retain workers here in the state of Michigan today? Kimari.
Sure. Okay. So right now, our unemployment rate is the lowest that it's been in probably 60 or so years. For us, going back to what I said about us being a technology company that does mortgages, we're competing for the same talent that General Motors is competing for, that Ford is competing for. Not to mention that you have LinkedIn that has come down the street. You have Amazon. And so now this talent pool that's really tight and has been in the city of Detroit is even tighter. And so we have to figure out how do we compete in that market. And so for us, it's really been hinging on our culture and staying ahead of the trend and ensuring that it is a great place to work. But that's the biggest challenge that we're facing right now.
Wendy, what do you feel is the biggest challenge?
I think that there are two really primary challenges that we're facing here in Michigan. One, to kind of echo what Kamari said, was getting back to kind of the pre-Great Recession numbers. So we do have to do a better job of attracting more talent here. And the work that Quicken Loans with LinkedIn and everyone else, that is making a difference. But I think the second thing is exposure to candidates about what the jobs there are that are out there, both, again, in small and large companies alike, because small to mid-sized businesses really do the lion's share of the hiring, both in Michigan and across the country, but they have no recognition. And so I think connecting the dots to make sure that that tight candidate pool knows that there are more and more opportunities here is a big challenge.
Biggest challenge? Rachel?
I'm going to piggyback, off of what Wendy and Kamari said. It's the same thing. So we need to attract people from outside of Michigan. And so for people who we look at, we call them boomerang. So people who grew up here or went to school here, left and want to come back. For those folks, if they want to come back, or maybe even if they've thought about it, they're not really sure, it's helping them understand that there's resources available for them. That's so critical, because there's people out there that want to come back, they just don't know how, because relocation is such a big process. And then really going out and finding those new people and selling not only the great culture at our companies, but again, also the lifestyle of what they can do here in Michigan. Because someone isn't just going to move for a great company, a great job opportunity, especially when they're part of a family and there's two of them that need a job, and then there's the family component as well. So both of those pieces have to be a fit. So it's not only selling our companies, it's also selling Michigan as a culture and a lifestyle.
Aisha, we heard Dean Balakrishnan mention before that you interviewed all over the country, very, very big companies, but you decided that you wanted to be right here. So that means the people at Quicken obviously did their job properly. But what was it that made you come here?
I think there were a lot of reasons. I think ultimately the reason I decided to stay in Michigan was because I was able to create a job that felt meaningful to me. The job that I landed at Quicken Loans, I was the first person hired in with that title. The job didn't even exist before I interviewed for it. The job barely existed while I interviewed for it. We were kind of like molding it together. So I felt like I was given this like amazing opportunity to create something along with this amazing company that's really standing behind me and helping me nurture my career to the next level.
All right, she decided to come here because she was able to have a job created for her. I have seen studies that 7 to 9 people that are hired for jobs that are being created because they are who they are. They came in for an interview and they said, you know what, this person has this skill, that skill, whatever. Let's create this position for them and work with them to do that. I didn't believe the figures, so I asked hiring managers and they said, yes, it's true. Your company did that for her. They worked with her. Address that. That helps people find something that matters to them.
So it's essentially, Dan Gilbert says this all the time, bring the talent through the door. We'll figure out the rest later, right? When I started with the organization, I was a leadership coach. I started as a leadership coach, and I was one person in that area of the business trying to figure it out because the company hadn't figured it out yet. And they saw my talent and brought me in, and now I lead talent development. We believe in creating opportunities. We have a strong entrepreneurial spirit. It's in our DNA. So when we look at things like that, it is that creation, not just in companies, but in roles, in teams. Like I've seen, and you've been with us now for how long?
About 6 months.
For 6 months. And so in 6 months, you've probably seen teams sprout up that didn't exist, right? We do it all the time. We create teams because we look at the business and what the business needs, and we say, if we have the talent, let's get the folks in the right spaces within our organization. If the title doesn't exist, create the title. And people want to be a part of their journey. Like the days of an organization just dictating what it is that you're going to do and who you're going to be, that doesn't exist anymore. So if people don't feel that they are a part of their work experience, then they're going to go somewhere else until they find that.
And Wendy, you told me that you have hired people that you never thought you would have hired because of maybe their education.
Absolutely. So I will just say that, just building a little bit upon what Kamari said, because I think that what Quicken Loans is doing is really at the pinnacle of what more companies have to do. And being that we are a manufacturing-based economy and spending a number of years at Ford Motor Company in workforce development, where you really had to have had the job before you get the job, it has to be a thing of the past. And so part of the technology that we have developed is really to start to break down some of those barriers. And it helps with everything from veterans transitioning from military work to civilian work, from college students transitioning from college into kind of their first or second jobs. And so we had some very strong preconceived notions in our company and in our leadership, and so we hired from the schools where our leadership went to school. And then when we started using our platform and moving all of that biasable information, we really learned that we were not hiring the right people. And so breaking out and opening up those doors, and I'll just share one example. We worked with a large kind of Fortune 100 company here in the local area, and they had a very large internship program, and they came to us and they said, we love your platform, this is years ago, but we love your platform, but you don't have enough students from X school. And so we looked in the platform, and the fact was that we had the greatest number of students, it was for engineering talent, at that school, but based on what this company was looking for, they kept getting matched to students from a different school. But they never recruited from there because it wasn't part of their legacy and their building blocks. And so now they have an internship program that is a robust with another school in the state of Michigan. Students are going to school in Michigan, they're building their careers, and they're finding fulfilling opportunities in this state. Not only that, the longevity of the employer, the longevity of the person staying at that company is longer. And back to Kamari's point again, when you have those kinds of opportunities and you can match the alignment better, the opportunity for growth and growth plans and leadership plans within that company is greater as well. So really critical.
And that's one of the things that we see in all of the studies that are out there. One of the biggest reasons that people are leaving their jobs, these 3 to 4 million people every single month, is because there's no direct career path for them. Rachel, we talked about brain drain, where it was going away. People said, I'm fed up with this, I want to move on. They're not allowing this to happen. I'm going someplace else because there's a better opportunity outside of the state of Michigan. What's the status of that now?
Yeah, so I think with, the brain drain, that label, I think can sometimes be a misnomer, because I think not all colleges were really looking at the origin of those students when they were also looking at the destination. So that's not necessarily the number that I like to look at. But when we look at in-migration numbers, for example, so then in West Michigan, we've had a net gain of in-migrants that's accounted for 26% of our population growth between 2010 and 2017. And that's a big number, and that's something that has really changed. And when I look at my work at Hello West Michigan and what we do as an organization, we know we've had an impact on that number. And so besides looking at college graduates, but also looking at kind of the whole talent spectrum of who's coming to Michigan, you can see that those numbers are really changing. Now, we have a long way to go. We have a really low unemployment rate. There's a lot more that we need to do. But at least in West Michigan and in the MSA for Grand Rapids, those numbers have changed, and that needle has really moved in terms of who we've brought to West Michigan. And so that's great news for us.
And when you look at it from the eyes of the job candidate, they are also taking a look at the companies and saying, do I really want to work there? Companies traditionally said, do we really want this person? Now, this person is saying, I want to check this company out and see what their culture is about. And I bring this to you because you interviewed all over the country, but said that it was the interview experience here that really brought you back.
Yeah, for sure. I got my degree in computer science. During my senior year, I thought it would be super hard to find a job. It turned out to be a lot easier than expected, which was amazing.
It's because you went to a good school.
Yeah, for sure. I interviewed almost in every state in Michigan. I was flying out once a week for a different interview. I went to Chicago, I went to Minneapolis, Seattle, California. And I think that a lot of the things that I heard and a lot of the things that I experienced were that some of these companies were so big and so bloated, and they were taking so many students that had just graduated and not treating them like individual people, just putting them in one group, and not really tracking how these people are progressing, or if they're happy in their current jobs, what they're doing to how far they're getting ahead, are they really staying at these companies. And what ends up happening is we constantly hear about young people moving around in their jobs so often, and I think it's because they're not feeling fulfilled in these roles. When I interviewed in Michigan, with Quicken to be specific, I felt like they really took the time to get to know me as a person. It wasn't hey, this is the role, this is what you need to do. It's hey, what are your strengths? Let's try to see if we can find a role where we can leverage those strengths. They talked to me about stuff like work from home days. They talked to me about time off, taking mental health days, stuff that's very, very important to me. And then also as a young person, these are all of these like extra things I can do, like in the city of Detroit, volunteering with Quicken Loans. And ultimately it gave me that like family experience that I think like led to me staying.
And keeping it with Quicken Loans, Kamari, you were telling me that there are two things, pride and what matters. And that's what you have to look for when you're trying to attract and bring people in. It's not necessarily the job classification. It's not necessarily the skills level. Talk about that. Pride, what matters.
Going back to like, it's not necessarily the skill. Like, we believe that we can teach the skills. But when it comes down to being prideful and understanding the work that matters most and the role that you play in it, it's extremely important. And so those are the things that we really look for. We don't like to say culture fit, because that is very subjective. So we look for specific things that relate to what we call our isms, which are our guiding principles within the organization. So, things like do the right thing. It's not about the who, it's about the what. Are you driven, by who's saying this or the title, or are you really driven by the impact that you can make? That's extremely important, because when we think about how we came to be, it has always been about the difference that we can make in someone's life. And so we look for team members that embody those type of qualities, because we know that those types of qualities are going to be what's going to continue to lead us into the future.
Anybody have questions? Raise your hand and we'll get somebody over there to pick up some of the cards, and we'll bring them up here and we'll address them. Rachel, you said that Western Michigan is the best kept secret. I just saw, and I told you about this, a Glassdoor study over the last couple of weeks, and it listed the best places for young people to find success in the first job. And it measured median salary and cost of living and housing. Grand Rapids was number 2 in the nation on that study. So congratulations to everybody out there. Tell me about that, though. Attracting people in Michigan, especially Western Michigan. You said it's not a hard sell anymore.
No, I think the interesting thing for West Michigan is that idea of being the best kept secret. It's kind of cool in one way, but it makes my job a little harder in another way. I think culturally, and just kind of when you think about the people that make up West Michigan, culturally, we're a very humble people. And so we don't talk about when we're doing well. We don't talk about when we're not doing well. And so that best kept secret part, that's a really hard kind of tradition to break. But really what my organization is doing with Hello West Michigan is we're trying to break that. We're trying to really shout from the rooftops that it is a great place to live and work. And, we've been really blessed to land on a lot of these top 10 lists, the best of lists. And that's been fantastic for our reputation over these last 5-6 years. And that's what kind of helps people realize, like, oh, Grand Rapids, I wouldn't have thought that about them, right? Like we just don't have that recognition or really that brand awareness around our city. Your city truly can have a brand recognition and like this identity of its own. And so when we think about the things that make it great for young people, there's a lot of jobs there. We have a very low unemployment rate. There's a lot of fantastic jobs. We are not the furniture makers of the late 1800s. We're known as Furniture City USA. That's great. We're also now known as Beer City USA, which is pretty fun too. That's great. So our economy has really diversified, and there are so many different types of opportunities, and not just at the Steelcases and the Amways and the Spectrum Healths. Those are fantastic anchor employers like Quicken Loans here in Detroit. But to Wendy's point, there's also a lot of fantastic small to mid-sized companies. And that's probably where you're going to find that job opportunity if you're a young person, or really any person. And we don't like to segregate, young versus old at Hello West Michigan. But another thing that makes us really unique is the low cost of living. That is such a big sell when you're looking at a new grad. And yeah, they might be comparing salary offers, but if you dig the level deeper and you say, all right, you're looking at a salary offer between California and Michigan. Now let's take a look at what the rent is going to be between California and Michigan, or all of your other costs that are associated with adulting and being out on your own. And that's something, it's not sexy to think about. It's not sexy to write out your budget and figure out those numbers, but it is such a big selling point. And it's so, so important when you're thinking about getting out, setting up your life, looking at the trajectory of like, hey, what are my lifetime earnings going to be, and paying off your student loans. I mean, how are you going to be able to do that when you have astronomical numbers for rent and for your other cost of living expenses? So things like that are really, really key. Plus, again, then adding all of those amenities that I already talked about. We're technically a second-tier city in terms of size, but we have so many amenities that the first-tier cities have.
And while you're talking about Western Michigan, the first question here is define Western Michigan. What are we talking about? A little bit about Traverse City, Petoskey area? I mean, they are west too.
Thank you.
Depending on
That's
from
so
where you're
subjective.
standing, right?
When we started Hello West Michigan, we basically said, you know what, we're going to cut ourselves in half, and that this half will be West Michigan. You know, some people look at the MSA or the Metro Statistical Area, and that's not even like the whole region that my organization covers. We go by the Regional Prosperity Initiative. So there's according to that, there's 10 regions in Michigan. West Michigan is Region 4, so we go from Ionia County out to the Lakeshore, and Allegan and Berry counties up to Mason County, which would be Ludington. So we cover a 13-county area. The largest 4 cities in that area are going to be Grand Rapids, Holland, Grand Haven, and Muskegon.
All right.
It's subjective. Not everyone's going to agree with me on that answer.
And this is a question that I had written down, and we're going to let you ask it. Are there skills that are that the talent are there skills that the talent you're currently recruiting still lacking? Are the skills that the talent you're currently recruiting still lacking? Wendy, I want to start with
turn
you.
that over to one of you two.
Right, Wendy, let's start with you because you take a look at it from inside. You know what's behind the door 1 and door 2 and door 3. You look at the skills.
So the question is there, do we still have a skills gap?
Right.
So I'm not exactly sure that, I am sure that the skills gap was never as great as once reported, but it's really more about skill alignment, number one. Number two, it's about helping to retrain and educate students for jobs that are coming next. So it's a little difficult to identify a skills gap when it's emerging as we live. So to Kamari's report, if you begin to hire based on the interests and there, some foundational skills, but aptitude to grow and transferable skills, we will be able to do a much better job of aligning that. We do need to think also, I believe, more deeply again about pathways. And so if you have foundational skills and you can get additional skills, one of the questions, so the whole system is based on surveys. So if you're, for example, looking for a job as a mechanical engineer, the employer answers the survey, the candidate answers the survey, and then through this patented algorithm that we've developed, it scores you and it gives you an alignment. The alignment goes both to the employer and to the candidate, and so to the point that was made earlier, it puts the candidate in the driver's seat. So it's not only does the employer want you, but are you interested in that position? And we give a score to both. But one of the questions that we ask is, are you interested in being trained? On the candidate side, and on the employer side, we say, are you willing to train? Because we know that sometimes the difference between a successful hire is a 6-week training program, and employers are willing to pay for it, but they don't know how to get to that talent. So again, it is that alignment. So I believe for sure in the state of Michigan, we either have the talent with the skills, or we have the talent with the aptitude and the interest in gaining those skills. And that's going to be helpful.
Okay, so do you assess the labor pool right now as you see it? Do you see, and you have thousands of Michigan clients, you have clients all across the country, do we have the skills here in Michigan that we need? Or do you have to go outside to find them and try to bring them back?
Right. I would say based on the point of view from our system, we have the talent, but it's about exposure and connection. I'll just give you just another quick example. We have a recent partnership, but it's a great partnership, and it's with sales organizations. So we're working with a couple of the local malls, and the malls is a great format for a platform like Talent EI, because the employers, if you think about a mall, might have 250 employers, and so everyone's looking for pretty much the same talent. Sales talent, management talent, all kinds of new jobs, also kind of technology weaving in when we think about the online marketplace. And so now employers post in one place, and the candidates, it's very similar to a common app, like when you're applying for college. You apply in one place, and then you put the right person in the right spot. But it's a streamlined, equalized way to do that. And so that also helps us look at how the skill alignment is. And from our point of view, from who is posting it, we have it.
This one's really for everybody. How would you assess the people who are coming out of schools? Are the schools doing the right job? Are they creating the right majors? Art history was probably a very interesting major to have. I'm not sure we're looking for a lot of people to work in the malls for art history or in some of the mortgage companies. Are the schools doing the right job in pumping out the right people with the right credentials?
Well, I'll just jump in really quick because of the art history. So we recently hired a business analyst who was an art history major.
Uh-oh.
But she had the aptitude, and she had taken enough coursework, and her point of view and perspective bringing to the table. We are a technology company, but it's very, and I'm sure Kamari can attest to it, it is a creative endeavor. And so when you have that point of view, and then also you have diverse points of view connected, that makes the difference between job fulfillment and ultimately the bottom line, because when you have job fulfillment, companies are about people, then you can fulfill the company's dream.
That's a theme that we hear over and over here. It's all about people and what you bring, not necessarily what degree you hold. Kamari, would you say that the universities are doing an okay job in turning people out with what they need? We won't be offended.
No, so my thought on that is yes and. And the reason why I say yes and is I believe that there's something to be said about application and experience. And as from an employer point of view, it's looking at that person who's an art history major and then saying, okay, that's great. There's some foundational things that you're bringing into the table. Now, how do we align that to what's happening within our organization? And so those things from an educational standpoint, the schools don't know that, right? And so that's incumbent, a part of what I do within the organization is to take those very brilliant minds that have been invested in and taught, and then tying that to what we need in the organization for the organization to thrive. I think sometimes where the disconnect comes at organizations is there's an expectation that if I pick you up from a university, that you have all of the answers, you know all of the things, and so why aren't you doing it? Well, no, there's a responsibility from the organization to help that person acclimate, right, and to teach them how we communicate in the organization. So when we take team members that come in, whether they have, a college degree or whether they just came in from high school, there's a course that we say that's it's called Leading Yourself. And we talk about the art of feedback and how do we communicate with one another. How do you prioritize your time within this organization? So nobody came in and told us to do that. We looked at our organization and said, where are the gaps that we need to fill so that we can set these team members up for success, regardless of if they have a degree from the University of Michigan or they just graduated from Cass Tech or Northern or whatever school it was, right?
All right, and so that leads me to another question from one of our friends here. Should universities be focusing on something other than the academic programs? If so, what?
I could actually start with that one if you guys don't mind. So I graduated really recently. I got my degree in computer science. I used very little of what I learned in my computer science classes. I actually found a lot of my extra classes to be a lot more helpful. Day to day, I feel like when I was in college, I took a public speaking class. That's something that I utilize all the time, including right now. Mm-hmm. I took intense writing level classes. I took an entrepreneurship class. I made sure to look at the classes that had skill sets that I think I would like to know, stuff like finance, stuff that I think is important to know. The University of Michigan-Dearborn, I know that when I looked at the credits that I needed to graduate, I was allowed to do that. I was part of the campus honors program, which had me take philosophy classes. I learned about Socrates and Aristotle. I think those ultimately helped me just as much or even more than my actual major of computer science did, because I'm utilizing all of these different parts of my brain. And that helps me connect with people and relate to people and actually do certain tasks that might not be super engineering focused better.
You mentioned the ability to communicate and speak publicly, and you're using that right now as part of your job.
Yeah.
Interesting statistic, public speaking and presentations, if you can do that and present that in a resume, you are likely to have a 10% greater salary than if you don't have that skill, and a 15% greater chance of moving up the corporate ladder into management. It's just something I remembered from an event that we did not long ago, but practice your public speaking.
I would just like to applaud the classes that Aisha took and the opportunity that University of Michigan-Dearborn, with the opportunity that they provide their students to take those. Because again, back when I was working at workforce development at Ford, this is years ago, the biggest complaint was engineers are only doing the engineering work. And you have to communicate, and especially as teamwork is such a core part of just the general life of work today, that those I won't call them extracurricular, but those additional curricular programs are really critical. And as the schools do that more, so, I mean, you need your core competencies, and then you need those extra things. And the only other thing I would add is the idea of pushing earlier down the idea of experiential learning and internships all the way from your freshman year, because just understanding what the world of work looks like helps, and that helps those building blocks so that you can build them and you can make decisions based on whether you like one work environment or a different work environment. And as the labor market tightens, those choices become more and more important.
And as we talk about retaining and attracting younger talent, which we have today, a question about what about retaining and attracting the other part of the workforce that's 50 years old and up. Where does that part fit in? A lot of companies I have read and reported on are now looking for people in that age group because they have openings, and we have a very tight labor market, and we have a 50-plus year low jobless rate in the country. And it's difficult to find people with certain skills. Some companies are actually, probably the corporate attorneys wouldn't like it, but hanging signs out saying that they're looking for senior citizens.
I'll go ahead and take a stab at that one. You know, this is a really interesting question, particularly because at Hello West Michigan, you know, I mentioned that we kind of work with all levels of talent in the talent spectrum. So, you know, I think a lot of people, when they think about regional talent attraction, it always seems to automatically get the young label attached to it. So people always think, oh, Rachel, you're bringing young people back to West Michigan or keeping them in West Michigan. Well, yeah, I'm working on that, but we also really look at, you know, the full talent spectrum. And the majority of the people I work with are between, I would say, 28 and 38, but then even on the higher side of that. And that's because just kind of, again, thinking about the people coming to West Michigan, it's people, so 28 to 38, those would be people who have done West Michigan, they left, they want to come back because they want to buy their first home. They want to start a family and they want to have their family support. They've already started a family and realize how difficult that is to do with two parents working and no grandparent support. And then we also have people who have vacation homes who they want to now make their second home their primary home. Or they said, you know what, I had a 20-year career somewhere. I'm done kind of climbing the ladder. I want a job where I can come, I can contribute every day, but I'm not ready to retire yet. So we actually get a lot of those folks who are 50 plus. And, you know, unfortunately not a lot of employers, at least in West Michigan, are looking at those folks. Particularly when, you know, they're seeing that they're coming from outside of the area and looking at their salary requirements. And maybe not even, requirements aren't the best word, but you think about, all right, if you have someone with 25 years experience coming from Chicago, a lot of HR professionals look at that person with a price tag. They say, well, you know what, they have this salary, they probably have this salary now, I can't pay them that salary. Well, you know what, if you just talk to them, maybe they're willing to take a step down in salary for less responsibility because they don't want to take that call at 2 a.m. when something goes wrong, right? They're ready to sort of take that step down. And so it's something that is becoming really, really common, especially as you think about kind of your age in the workforce and you think about retirements extending out because people just need to work longer. We see a lot of manufacturers, because there's basically a gap in their talent pipeline when skilled trades were not pushed, you know, between basically the last like 5 to 10 years. There's this like an age gap in their talent pipeline, which means all of the baby boomers that are ready to retire, they're begging them to stay on and say, will you do some sort of flexible retirement program so we can take your knowledge and transfer it to the folks that are now coming in? And there are a lot of different strategies around that, but it's really critical. And a lot of companies, if they're not looking at it, they need to look at those folks.
When we talk about bringing people back, it really goes, all age groups are doing that. And we talk about the boomerangs, it was mentioned here before, and I have to come back to you on that one because you are a boomerang. You left Texas, I believe?
Yes.
And then you decided to come back here because you missed the winter. No. You decided to come back here because?
Because of Quicken loans.
Okay, it was the opportunity.
So,
Just
yes,
like
it
Aisha,
was-
who went there for the opportunity for her on an individual basis.
Yeah, so to be more specific, I left right around 2008, and I said I was never coming back to Detroit. Never. Never say never. And then a friend of mine that partnered with Quicken reached out to me and said, hey, I think you should check out this mortgage company. And I remember saying to her, dude, I don't sell mortgages. I don't know anything about mortgages other than the fact that I own a home. And she said, no, you really need to check out, go to the website, look at what they're doing in the city. I think they had just moved down to Detroit in 2010. And in my mind, I remember thinking, she doesn't even work for this company. And she is pushing me to really check it out because the company was all about the community and it took care of its people. And so I said, for an opportunity such as that, I will come back home. And so I came back home 6 years ago. I have not regretted being back home. I've learned so much, and the organization has stood by what I believed before I came back, and it has never disappointed me.
And so now you're in a position of trying to bring people in. You're right in the middle of the Renaissance of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
How does that play a part in getting people to locate here, getting people to want to stay here?
So, going to what Rachel said earlier, it is about changing the perception, right? I think that's a huge thing that we have to overcome about people's perceptions about the city of Detroit, Michigan in of itself, and painting a different picture. So one of the things that we do is we bring in, over the summer, probably about 1,000 to 1,200 interns. And we put them up at Wayne State. And we invite their parents in. We do Parent Day. And when we say interns, it's not just limited to folks who are college age, right? We have interns who are older. We have interns who have their PhDs and their master's degrees, and they're looking for changes. And what we found, I had a team member of mine, he would drive from Bowling Green after the summer was over. He went back to school. He would drive from Bowling Green back up every day because he wanted to work in the organization. He invited his parents because his parents were extremely concerned about him being in the city of Detroit, what that looked like. The parents came in, stayed a weekend, and completely changed their minds about what the city of Detroit is. And so I think that's our job as employers, is what is the story that we're telling, not just about our organization, but what are we telling about the communities in which we're in? How are we helping the region reshape and reframe the context for folks?
So a little gift for you, Kamari, as a boomerang. You get a boomerang keychain.
Oh.
Welcome back.
So we're marketing that.
What you say there is so critical, because if we don't have the voices that are in this room right now, and your classmates and the people you work with, not only talking about the companies that you work for, but also the community that you live in. Without Kamari's friends, she wouldn't be here. And I think it's so great to really distinguish, it wasn't someone that even worked at Quicken. That's the amazing part of that story. But if we don't advocate for ourselves as a state, then people are not gonna come back. We found so often that it was the parents that were saying, don't come back to Michigan because it's not a great place to live, or don't go into manufacturing because it's not a great industry. We are our own worst enemies when it comes to that. And I think we've really started to turn the corner when we really think about, hey, actually this is a great place to live and work, but we have to tell other people about that. And you have to ask them, you have to make the invitation to say, have you looked at Michigan lately? Have you thought about coming back here?
Question, you just mentioned automobiles. We have a question about automobiles, and does our presence in the automobile industry dominate the job industry?
Not in West Michigan.
They're not all auto jobs. I mean, one of the reasons that all of the financial experts are saying, if there is a big economic downturn, We are a little more insulated than we used to be here because we have technology. As a matter of fact, speaking of technology, you have made a comment that we are number 3 job hub in technology in the country, and in 10 years you say we'll be number 1, right?
You've been reading some things.
I follow her on YouTube. But how is that going to happen? Where is this growth going to come from? And what about the support that will enable that to happen, which creates more jobs in itself?
So, I mean, it is the companies like LinkedIn and some of the other tech companies that have come. But there's also, when you think about the legacy automotive industry, right? If you don't get autonomous cars, right, without technology. It's interesting. I read an article that Mary Barra, when GM, before the current situation, but when GM did the layoffs, one of the things she said at the bottom of the article that I don't think people actually read was that she said, we're still hiring. And this is what we're hiring for. And they were all tech jobs. And so that's a huge part of it. The other part of it, too, is the startup mentality, right? Like I had a friend that just created an app that is going live he's part of DVP, which is Detroit Venture Partners. But when you think about what you can do as an individual or as a small business in the technology space, that's how you start to do that. That's how you get to the number 1 spot. You have to start thinking very differently than how we've thought about this in the past. And you have to also understand is that you can't limit people. You have to support folks like Rocket Fiber. Rocket Fiber started because we wanted Google to come in and do that work. And Google said, no. So someone said, well, I have an idea. We could do it ourselves. Let's create it. And so now you have Rocket Fiber that is supplying the technology, the cable, to dozens of homes and residences and businesses downtown Detroit, right? So it's how do you start to connect the threads and tie people together with who have brilliant ideas and support them. So that's just my 2 cents on that one.
And I'm reminded of about 6 years ago doing a story at Ford Motor Company saying, why are you not out there advertising in the general publications and in the traditional ways for talent? And where are you going to find these people that are going to lead the company? And the answer was, we're going online, we're going on social media, because these are the types of people that we want. The people who are out there on those quote-unquote platforms are the ones we want. And I had directed the question to the chief financial officer of the company, and I can say this now because he's since retired, but he said, you know what? He said, I wouldn't get a job here today because I'm not out there on social media. Mm-hmm. And of course, I use that on the air a lot because it's a great comment for somebody like that to make, but it's true and it really drives home the point of what's happening. What about
I think there's another point to make that, especially in some of the larger companies, and this notion of contract labor or contingent labor. Mm-hmm. And so currently, contingent labor makes up the statistics are very quite dramatically, but let's just say it's about 20% of the U.S. labor market is contingent labor. So those are people who are contractors. And over the next 10 or 15 years, that is going to more than double. And so we need to be looking at 2 things. Number one, we need to be looking to make sure that those opportunities are meaningful with the benefit packages that they need, because we know why contract labor exists. But we also have to figure out how to have pathways to make sure that people understand that those are real, meaningful jobs. Mm-hmm. I mean, many employees of the 3 OEMs in Detroit are contract laborers. And so we have to make sure that those become, as it grows in size, that we have pathways to get there and that people can have meaningful work experiences. Important point, and important to watch it over the next few years.
A couple of questions here on international students. Any perspectives regarding being an international student? Advice for international students who want to stay in Michigan and find jobs? And how do you attract and keep international talent in Michigan? Is it different than anything else?
Well, I would say that we have to work more with employers to understand the visa restrictions, because there are some visa restrictions, and we have to again, this is my point of view. We have to help them grow to be more accepting of that international talent. And we all know there's some serious immigration issues happening. But I will tell you that it's changed dramatically over time. And it used to be that we wanted to keep foreign nationals in this country because we didn't have the talent that we need. Now we have the talent that we need, or the perceived talent that we need, and we have to do a better job of integrating foreign students into our experiences. Some employers are open to it. We always, through the Talent EI platform, encourage employers to not have restrictions unless you do. There are certain organizations that actually have legal restrictions, but if you don't have a legal restriction, you should open up and look at them and hire them.
And of course, the way you match up job candidates with companies, nobody would know if you're looking just at skills. You want
Right.
to hire somebody and they're a great person and you say bring them in, and does it matter at that point? Unless, as you said, there's some kind of company legality involved. Let's put it
Correct,
that way.
correct. So the idea is that oftentimes what happened, I mean, look, at a lot of these recruiters, especially with the tight labor market, are going through hundreds and hundreds of resumes. So if you're going through hundreds of resumes, what's the path to least resistance? You can't pronounce the name, it's out. You don't know the school, it's out. And those people never get a fair shake. So at least if we start the playing field equally, and we look at where the alignment is and say, based on specifically what you were looking for, here's your best candidate, and then look at the kind of specific demographics of that person, more people will get a fair shake, and that's the goal.
A study just out today from a firm, Envoy Global. I hadn't heard of them before, but they happen to be a company that helps people with visas. And they were saying that as things change in this country where it comes to visas and international students and international participants in our labor force, they're opening up in Canada. They have a goal to attract 3 million full-time people in the next 2.5 years, and that more tech jobs are being created in Toronto right now because of that than in Seattle and what they call the Bay Area of California and Washington, D.C. And there was one figure that 1 out of 3 companies that they surveyed are planning to look to Canada to open an office there, and many of them already have. That is right across the river from us. So there is more competition for attracting and bringing people in and keeping people here in Michigan.
Right, and some of it is just changing old mindsets. And there are a couple of organizations in Detroit that work specifically to help international students transition to for employment, both in the internship at the full-time level. And so we need to figure out how to integrate that more, have more people know about that, and then scale that so that these companies aren't saying, well, we might want to be in Michigan, but because you won't hire the talent, we're going north to Toronto. We don't want that.
Well, there are a lot of opportunities for IT, engineering, tech. We hear about that all the time. What about people with liberal arts degrees? Status of that, somebody is asking here. What opportunities are there for them, and how do you go about finding these people, or how do they go about finding you?
I'd really like to take this one. I'm on a technology team at Quicken Loans. I'd say 50% of my team doesn't have an engineering specific degree. We have people that have economics degrees, people that have English degrees, and I know that when I was in college, art history degrees got kind of laughed at for not being like, you're not going to get a job out of college. A lot of these people end up working in technology just because it's such a, like, we're just looking for talent. They're smart, capable individuals. I think personally, the way I see it, it's more about the skill set you have. It's more about like the soft skills and being willing and able to learn some of the more technical things. Hope that helps.
What about the use of recommendations? How important is a recommendation these days from somebody? Either you search the recommendation that was given you, or the person that was given to you as a possible recommendation, or you search your own environment and community for recommendations, going to the people that you know and trust and saying, if you can give me somebody, I'll give you money. Finder's fees. Does that happen? A lot to talk about there.
Yes, it happens. With some of our more hard to find roles, some of those finder fees are a little bit higher than others. But for us, we believe that good people often surround themselves with good people or great people. So 51% of the team members within our organization are referrals. They were referred by someone that worked in the organization to come and work in the organization. And so I think that's really, really important. And the organization has been that way since it was founded. And it's proven to create great success for us in that space.
So recommendations, I mean, that's more than half of your staff. It came from a recommendation. And
Yes. And
do
then
they
we
make it?
Yeah, yes, they make it. They do make it. And I think, so that's 51% of the recommendations that are documented, meaning that they were put into the system by someone who works within the organization. I am a referral, but I'm not a referral from someone that worked in the organization. So I would say that our actual numbers of referrals of people that were referred to come into the organization is probably much higher than 51%.
Let's talk about after you get somebody in the organization. Statistics tell us that when young people, I hate to say young people again, but young people out of college get that first job, within 6 to 9 months they're looking for the next job. Even though the company may have offered them a good salary, some kind of opportunity or whatever, people always want to do better. So how do you bring people in? How do you onboard them? Are there programs that you see out there that are helping people succeed, support programs for them once they get in?
You want me to
Anybody
answer that,
wants
or-
to?
I mean, I could.
Go right ahead.
So we have a pretty robust onboarding program. For those folks who are coming into our sales force, the training is 35 weeks. And
35 weeks of training.
35 weeks of training. And so they're able to come to us, get their license, be set up to start their career. But in each team, there is an onboarding process. So for us, we sit central in the organization. So as I said earlier, we have a program called Leading Yourself. And that's the whole idea of you don't need a title to be a leader within this organization. We're going to give you the tools and the resources for you to be successful. We are also very huge on team member development. It's extremely important. We do a lot of mentorships. We give team members avenues like Q Talks where they can actually get up and share their story with pretty much the entire organization. And so those are the pieces that are outside of just what I do every day in my job. And so when we look at team members who are ready to leave at 12 months, if a team member expresses to us, hey, I'm ready to move on or do something different, hopefully we've had conversations before that team member makes that decision. But then when that comes to us, we have conversations, right? We try to dig into what's happening and what's going on with this team member. I had a team member a few months ago that felt they plateaued in their current role. And so after we had some further discussions, the team member actually found an opportunity at Bedrock, which is one of our sister companies, right? And so being able to tap in to understand what is it that you need as a team member to be successful is extremely important. And then how do I work with you to help you find those opportunities? And so from my experience, the organizations who have this set system of you can't be promoted until you've been at the organization for a year. You can't move into another role until you've been doing this role for 9 months. You're limiting yourself because that team member can just leave your organization and get another job somewhere else and get that experience. So I always challenge our leaders to say, how are we creating the experiences for those team members to stay? When I came back, I didn't know I was going to be here. It'll be 7 years here in a few months. But it was because I've stayed so long because I've had so many roles in the last 6 months within the same job family, but I've had so many different opportunities to grow. The other thing is identifying where the opportunities are and being solution focused. So if you see an opportunity, are you creating the solution? And then are you supporting the team member with that solution to create that outcome? That's how you start to keep your folks there, because again, it goes back to, does that team member feel like they are actually in control of their career life journey? The moment that they start feeling as though they have no control, that team member is going to go somewhere else to where they feel they can have more control.
Right here on this very stage, about 1.5 years ago, we had the former CEO and chairman of Kelly Services here, Carl Camden. And he made a comment along those lines that there are some of his employees who he calls in and says, you know what, I've talked to so-and-so who's a friend of mine, and he's got a job open for you, and I've recommended it for you. You're not getting fired, but you've gone as far as I can take you here, and you've gone as far as you can go here. I want you to go there, get that other experience, and I'm going to call you back when you get it, and I'm going to bring you back here in a different role. A lot of people were shocked to hear that, but that's what's happening these days as well.
Right, and just to echo that, you know, millennials, for sure, the studies show that about 12 to 14 different jobs in their career. That's the average. And so when you have a company like Quicken, it can help you grow your career in all different and various ways. That's great, but it is true that people are going to change jobs. And I remember when the first person on my team left, like after 14 months, and I was like, what did I do wrong? And she said, nothing, I loved it, I'm ready for my next opportunity. And somehow to think about embracing that and celebrating that, because that person might come back. And similar to the story that you told, Murray, the president of EUI was talking, and his catch-all was like, if you want to go spread your wings, go spread your wings, but know that we're here when you want to come back. Get 5 years of experience. And so to the point, let's make sure that that's just happening in the state of Michigan. And go to a small company and a big company and, you know, check it out and see where you fit. And so that just the open conversation is important. If you can grow here, fine. But if not, you know, go somewhere else. It's okay. We have to be more fluid.
To put that in a real life example, I am a millennial, squarely in that category. And I've been with my company for 6.5 years, and 5.5 years was in the same role. But just to what both of them said, every day I felt invested in, every day I felt like I could determine where my career path was going. And from day one, I knew what the next step could be when that time came around. And they were very transparent with me about that. And so I'm, 6.5 years with the same company. And so every day I'm fighting the statistic of millennials don't stay very long, which is kind of a fun place to be.
Well, it's happy to see that. It's nice to see that. What are additional examples of partnerships, collaborations that make your organization successful? Rachel, you deal with that every day.
Yeah.
I mean, you try to forge these partnerships.
That's exactly right. Our whole organization is built on partnerships and collaborations. So when you think about even the genesis of our organization, they were competitors at the table. It was employers who started Hello West Michigan. So you think about West Michigan, we have Spectrum Health and Mercy Health. We have Herman Miller, Hayworth, and Steelcase. They were all at the table. They all do the Hayworth, Herman Miller, and Steelcase, that's furniture. Obviously, Spectrum Health, Mercy Health, they're hospitals. They're competing against each other for talent, certainly, but they also realized, you know what, us as a region, we're competing against other regions, and it's important that we work together on that. So that's like the number one collaboration that we had and that we still continue to today. But we also really look at collaborations with our colleges and university partners. We have a big event coming up here on the night before Thanksgiving, and one of the biggest ways that we get the word out is through the alumni associations at our colleges, because they sort of have the line on basically everyone that graduated from a Michigan college. And so we want to put that invitation out there to say, hey, if you thought about West Michigan, please come back, and there's an opportunity for you to explore what that could look like. And then we also partner with a lot of nonprofits and basically community agencies in West Michigan. You know, we're such a unique area that when you think about someone coming back and what their lifestyle is going to be, that doesn't just touch your work, right? You don't just go to work and then come home. There's a lot of other things that you're going to touch in the community. And so it's important that we sort of have everyone on board as we talk about making West Michigan a welcoming place to be and making sure that we're not the only ones shouting this from the rooftops. We want everyone to be talking about West Michigan and make that invite to say, hey, have you thought about relocating here?
All right, by the way, if anybody has any more questions, we need to get them in now so we can try to get everybody out in time we can all meet again on the freeway Southfield as we're bumper to bumper out there at the same time. We want to try to do that. Talk about internships, because internships are very, very important. As I was talking to each of you earlier in the last couple of weeks, I've seen internships that have worked. I've seen internships that didn't work. How important is that today? Is that the new way that you're finding the talent that you want to bring to Michigan, or the talent that you would like to retain here?
Well, I will take it maybe first from a candidate point of view, because I think experiential learning and kind of, we touched on a little bit the importance of just understanding the world of work earlier in your career is better. And sometimes a really bad internship is more important than a good internship, because you're able to begin to define what you want to do. And I'll just share, just a quick personal example that kind of ties the two together, small businesses and internships. So my daughter, my oldest, who's now a graduate of college, she came through our platform and got her first internship through the platform. And she got an internship at a firm that helps children with autism on Northwestern Highway in Southfield. Never in a million years would she ever understand or learn about a company like that, but for a system that is kind of blind and correlated and connecting them. She matched with it. It transformed what her course of study was. She decided that she wanted to study public policy and education policy as a result of what happened. So that happened on her front. It changed her. The company was a startup, brand new firm. They are now a national firm, and but for talent like that internship talent, they would not have been able to grow in the way that they did. So small businesses help young people grow their careers, and interns help businesses grow and fulfill their dreams. And so I think it's critically important. The transition of, even if you are a parent or you're a student for sure, you know that the transition of probably the last 5 to 6 years of internships in the literature that comes when colleges are recruiting your kids is more than ever. So it is now more and more integrated into the experience and critically important. So I think the more you can do to test drive the talent from the employer standpoint, and for the talent to test drive different careers, it's critical and great. It's a great thing about our country that we have now.
And there's
So-
a competition to get good interns, right? I mean, companies are battling for the best interns because they know if we have a good internship, as you said, if we pay our interns, then they realize this is a serious thing. That's the best internship to get, not only for the money, but for the relationship as it grows.
For sure, and more employers that from the statistics that we see are now paying, and that is critically important, and we always encourage employers to pay. But again, it's back to, we do a bunch of work in Chicago, and what we have done is we've connected all of the community colleges across the city of Chicago and connected them. We've just really created a pipeline to those schools, and now as employers come on, whether it's J.P. Morgan Chase, who has a huge internship program, or some of the smaller community organizations and businesses, they are directly tied to that talent. And so again, it's about making those pathways and connecting those people.
So I was an intern. I interned, I think, my entire college experience at a multitude of different companies. I think I learned a lot, and I think it made me go down the career path I am currently in. I interned in different cities, and I think that was also pivotal for me to understand. I spent a couple weeks out in San Francisco on public transportation before I realized, nope, this is not for me. I need to be in my own car. It gave me the opportunity to work at different companies. I worked at General Electric, which is a huge company, and then I worked at a startup in Ann Arbor. And it really, from a college perspective, taught me what's important to me, really defined that. And also, coming into Quicken as my first job, I have all of these different perspectives for how different companies work. So I'm able to appreciate it more, and I'm also able to bring in things that I like and incorporate those into the company culture.
A quick intern story. Many years ago, more years than I want to admit, I was an intern on the East Coast at a television station in Providence, Rhode Island, a small television station with a small staff. And lo and behold, one day somebody called in sick, somebody was on vacation, somebody had an emergency in their family, and they said to me, "You're on." And that's what happened. So I immediately called my professor, who was in Boston at the time, and I told him what was going on, and I said, if you go to a bar that's probably 30 miles south of where you are and you can turn on the TV, you'll be able to see it tonight. And he said, "You just aced the course. You don't have to come back anymore." My father, though, did have to pay the whole course. True story there. As we wrap this up, I just want to ask a couple of final questions here and some final thoughts. Kamari, the biggest thing that businesses and the community can do to grow a talent base, what should we be looking at over the next 5 or 10 years?
So I think it is, to what Wendy spoke earlier about, it's the future of work. It's really thinking about what is the talent you're going to need in 5 years, right? And start preparing your organizations for that and thinking ahead. I think sometimes we can get so stuck into what's happening right now and just for today and not thinking about where we're trying to go and how do you either attract that talent or start to groom that talent, right? Because that's an attraction point. If I can let you know or show you how we're going here and how we can further develop you in the preparation for that, that's the reason why you want to work at our organization, right? Otherwise, we're like all the other organizations around, right? And so it's thinking about what is your differentiator as an employer, and why would somebody want to work there? It's also thinking about your own why as an organization, and how are you connecting that to the candidate's purpose and their why, not just your reason for being.
Rachel, you alluded to something earlier, and I want you to expand upon it, and that's, you talk to colleges and universities, when are your people coming home, and when are they going to be home in the community? You do something on a very popular bar night, which is the night before Thanksgiving.
Yes, it
and
is.
it's taken off and it's gone statewide. Explain.
It has, yeah. So, for us, and Hello West Michigan, we work all year long to attract talent to West Michigan. But the cool thing is, on the night before Thanksgiving, it's our signature event because it's the in-person version of what I do all year long, which is so fun for me and my team. But it's called Rethink West Michigan, and it's on the west side of the state. But the great thing is that there's ones actually around the whole state. This event has been copied. So if you have someone that is coming home for the Thanksgiving holiday, whether that be a sibling, adult children, your college buddies that have moved away but are coming home for the holiday to visit you, tell them that if they are interested in relocating to West Michigan or Michigan overall, they can kind of explore that idea at these events. And basically, across the state, there are events, and they're casual networking events. I know no one wants to go to a career fair or a networking event when they're on their holiday break, but we keep it really casual. At least in West Michigan, all of our events are at a bar, so there's alcohol involved, there's hors d'oeuvres. We keep it very, very casual. But it's an opportunity for those folks outside of the area to really come home and have conversations with employers. And if they've been thinking about the move, they have face-to-face conversations. They are not applying online, although they do all need to do that. I know ATSs run our lives. But an opportunity to make that face-to-face connection and really explore what West Michigan could look like and what living here in Michigan could look like. So in West Michigan, we have events in Grand Rapids, Muskegon, Ludington, Fremont, Oceana County, and Hastings. But then across the state, we have them in Lansing, in Houghton, in Traverse City, and in Ann Arbor. So backtomichigan.com is where you can learn information about all of those events across the state. It's free to attend. I please just encourage you to make that invitation or make that ask. That's how we have Kamari here. That's how a lot of other folks make it back to West Michigan, is they make that invitation. And so do one thing for your state today, and that's to tell someone else how much you love living here, and to check out backtomichigan.com.
Backtomichigan.com. Is that back T-O?
Either one.
Oh,
Either one you can
the
do.
two? Or
Yes.
back, oh, that's smart. Okay.
Yes.
Wendy, I saved you for last because you said something to me that I have been thinking about for the last couple of days, and you alluded to it here, and I'm going to do it on the radio because I think it's so important for everybody to know, and that is that 8 out of 10 job descriptions are inaccurate at many, especially big companies. That's amazing to me. How are they supposed to find the people? How are we supposed to be able to apply if we don't know what they're really looking for? It says they're looking for everything that I am, but they're not.
Right.
Tell me about
Right.
that. They don't update them.
They don't update them, and I just earlier this week read an article in Forbes, and the title of the article is "Why Job Descriptions Are Dead." And they're dead for a couple reasons. One, Murray, just to what you said, that they are outdated. Many of them are 8 to 10 years old for the large companies. And if you're a small to mid-sized business, what do you do when you're looking to write a job description? You Google the job description of the large company and you copy it. And so we are replicating these out-of-date job descriptions that are really they're just menus of what a mechanical engineer might do. And so we need to move beyond that, because again, what happens is if I'm looking for a job, I'm going to look at the job description and I'm going to design my resume to match that job description, and we are just, it's, input, output. And that's one of the problems with artificial intelligence, is that it does a good job of kind of cataloging all that, but it's just based on the information. And so Talent EI really moves beyond that. So we say, our kind of tagline is we employ intelligence, employ real intelligence, not artificial intelligence. So if we articulate specifically what the needs of the job are, we can then do a better job of connecting to that talent. Because the fact of the matter is that a mechanical engineering is not a mechanical engineering at all jobs. They are vastly different. The work that you do at Quicken is vastly different from the work that is being done in your field in another company. And so because of all of the technology that we have now, we can drill down to the specific needs of what the opportunity are, and the candidate can do the same. And that is going to be transformative. And so in coming soon, we won't have resumes and job descriptions. And what happened, if you just think about it for a minute, if I think about when I got my first job, I had a paper resume and I folded it and I put it in a letter based on a want ad from an old-fashioned newspaper. And then Monster and Career Builder came on, and you were like, oh my goodness, I can work anywhere in the world. All I have to do is upload it and it goes. But what the net result has been is that it's just created a very noisy market of bad input and bad output. And so what Talent EI really tries to do is move beyond that to be the next iteration of smart matching, so that we can do a better job of knitting together our ecosystem to really align and really just align and connect talent with the opportunity where both parties are sitting in the driver's seat. And so we'll see what happens.
I like that line, real intelligence, not artificial intelligence. Thank you all so very much. What a great panel. What great insight today that is so helpful to anyone who's within the sound of our voice. Thank you all for being here and taking the time to enlighten us. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. We hope to see you in the next one. It'll be coming up in February, so keep watching the website, because it will be there at University of Michigan-Dearborn.edu/COB. Got it right. We'll see you there. Thank you all very much. Good night, everyone.